Hello, everybody. Um, Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm going to get started here. We've got a couple of intro slides, so as a few more people join. Obviously, we'll be going through the intro to start here anyway. So we'd like to get started, if that's okay with everybody. Just want to say welcome to this session. Obviously, we've run a number of webinars in the past, so I'm actually joining from Belgium today rather than London. So I won't be saying welcome from London for once. It'll be welcome from Belgium. Today's session, we're going to focus a little bit more on the best practices in PDF preparation automation, how you can automate a lot of things that you're doing today, potentially manually or in batch, how you can do some of those things fully automatically as well. So with that, I'll just explain a little bit what we're going to go through, a quick intro in terms of what the problems are, look at some of the manual submission PDF preparation steps you may be going through today, some of the tools that you're using, how you might achieve that. I'll keep that quite brief. Kind of focus a little bit more on what exactly can be automated. What are some of those things that you're doing potentially manually today that can be automated, and then how you can actually automate them as well. I will provide some practical examples as well at the end. In this session, we're kind of doing an introduction, show some practical examples at the end with some slideshows, with some screens. But one of the things I do want to point out is that there will be a second session next week, which you will receive an invitation for everybody on the line and other colleagues, etc., that you may have, will receive an invitation for next week, which will be focused purely on the demonstration part of this. So those sessions at the end, the practical examples I give, I'll actually do that live in the product next week. So the entire session will be devoted to demonstrating some of this automation actually taking place as well live in front of us. So you receive that invitation soon. And there, again, it will be focusing on automating bookmarking, hyperlinking, tables of contents, tables, table of tables, table of figures, etc., font usage, etc. as well. So there'll be a number of scenarios, live scenarios as well. But I will talk through it today, as well as some of those practical examples. But as I say, it will be a live demonstration next week. With that, just looking at some of the steps that you may go through today, so how you may be doing this manually. So if you take a typical documents lifecycle, all the way through from, authoring the content and reviewing it and updating, your medical writers or external authors that are involved, using native applications like the Office suite to author the content and review it. At various points in time, that content is rendered to PDF. And that PDF is then really prepared to be included in submissions. Typically, often the rendition itself isn't completely ready yet to be included in the submission. It's certainly not health authority ready. So typically there's a preparation required before it gets included in the submissions, draft published and validated towards the end. And actually finalizing that might occur in a couple of those steps towards the end. What we're going to focus on really here in this session is preparing the PDF, that point here, and how we can automate some of those steps. That doesn't mean we haven't run other sessions on how our technology can be used for the rendering and also automating some of the reviewing and updating of the original source content, etc. We have other sessions for that. We're really focusing this one on the preparation of the PDF itself. So what we did was, once we've been speaking to customers, we've just been collating responses from our customers and other organizations that we're speaking to about where they spend most of the time today, which tasks specifically they're spending most of the time in PDF preparation, particularly obviously in the space, in the context of submission use. And obviously for those on the line, you'll be, I'm sure, familiar with a lot of them, obviously sort of adding bookmarks, creating bookmarks, not necessarily the bookmarks that are automatically generated. It's creating those additional bookmarks that aren't there, or creating bookmarks for scanned content, for example, as well. Obviously can be extremely time consuming. Same thing with hyperlinking. Again, very time-consuming task when it's done manually. A bit of surprise was the amount of font-related responses we had as well, ensuring the correct fonts, are used and that they're embedded in a correct way as well. I find a lot of time seemingly is being used for that task as well. And obviously the generation of the different types of tables of content. So you've got tables of tables, table of contents, table of figures, etc. There's a number of them. PDF viewing preferences, obviously very high, sort of making sure that as the PDF is opened, is viewed, etc. as well, and optimized in the right way. So you'll notice that the numbers don't add up to 100. That's normal. People obviously can reply with multiple answers there as well. So that's kind of really what the basis behind this session really is, kind of how can we take some of those manual time-consuming tasks and show you how technology can be used to automate them. And often you may be using tools within the Office suite, to maybe generate the PDF in the first place before you manipulate it. A lot of companies are still using Office to generate the initial PDF and then manipulating that further to make it submission ready, but often then using desktop tools to prepare the PDF for submission use, whether that's Acrobat or toolboxes or other plugins into Acrobat or whatever PDF tools you're using as well. And obviously at an enterprise level, you may have within your document management system, whether you're using Enov or Kara or Viva or DocuBridge or Documentum, whatever you're using, or SharePoint, often there's an element of the PDF creation there in particular can be done for you. So it can be used obviously in an enterprise level, one of the steps in the creation also. So if you look at some of those tasks, just isolating them, just obviously some quick look animations just to explain, just to show things that a lot of you will know far more than I as well about the time taken to do this. If you don't have, bookmarked kind of PDFs for whatever reason, depending on the tool that was used to generate the PDF, sometimes if the authors haven't styled the content correctly using the correct styles, often when the PDF is generated, you end up without either any bookmarks or without a complete set of bookmarks. So obviously then manually creating those additional bookmarks, getting them to the right level, dragging them to the correct hierarchical structure, and ensuring they're set to, to the correct zoom level. Again, manual, time consuming, and very risky. Same thing really with hyperlink creation. If they haven't been created at source as the content is authored, adding the hyperlinks later on. I'm showing you the extreme example here of doing it completely manually within Word, where you're taking text and the narrative text, figuring out where the target for that hyperlink should be, either within that document or potentially within another document somewhere as well, saying you want a hyperlink added, defining where exactly that should go, and ensuring that you're setting the correct zoom level. And then even having to make sure it's the correct color as well, literally setting the color. Now, I know I'm showing you the extreme example here. A lot of you will be using tools, for the creation of the hyperlinks. I'm showing you to an extreme, but ultimately, it's still, if it's manual, it's still time consuming because you're typically doing them one by one, or at best in batch with some kind of searching and search mechanism involved as well. So again, time consuming, and just grouping some of the other things, identifying issues. Some of them are just purely manual. It's a manual or visual identification, looking through, scrolling through your PDFs that you intend to use in submissions just to make sure, you've got ToCs present where you're expecting them. You may do that as a publishing task, whatever it may be. Making sure that you have the right level of bookmarks, the right number of levels, and that they're open to the correct level. Making sure your hyperlinks are all the right color and set to inherit zoom. Sometimes that can be tricky if it's black text to recognize that there's even a hyperlink there sometimes as well. Making sure each one is hyperlinked correctly and bookmarked to the correct zoom level. You may have blue text that isn't actually a hyperlink yet, that is, some kind of guidance text that should be removed, or it's text that should have been converted to a hyperlink later as well. So identifying that can be time consuming. Making sure your PDF properties are set correctly. It's the right PDF version for the intended health authorities. PDF file size isn't too large based on the guidance for size limits and optimized in the right way. Fonts are embedded correctly so that the reviewer is actually seeing it, and making sure that any fonts have been embedded that are used within it have been embedded so the viewing display is correct as well. And also making sure your initial view settings are correct. So just again, grouping, but if you're doing this manually, it's very time consuming, and you may have tools that do perform some of these tasks together, but not potentially all of them. And if you're then having to fix things, you may be using Acrobat technology, plugins into Acrobat or pre-flight within Acrobat. As I say, other tools as well you may be using. But again, a lot of those are manual, or at best maybe semi-manual or batch. So you can say, okay, I want to run the same change across multiple documents, for example. But you still have a human element involved, a human interaction selecting which files, which checks you want to run or which changes as well. So it's not automatic at all. So again, if you're doing those one by one, it's time consuming, and pre-flight is extremely powerful, but it's quite complex. And again, you're performing those actions document by document or across multiple files. So again, a very brief intro. And again, a lot of you may be have your own processes wrapped around these things, but again, often very manual. So what exactly can be automated and what do we mean by it? So not use these images in a little while, but at the end of the day, there's always the target of automating as much as you can. It speeds things up. There's a lot of benefits to it. And we'll talk about that, summarize that towards the end. Obviously, the idea is to automate. And a lot of people talk about we have interactive tools, it's interactive, but at the end of the day, interactive is, as Arnie is saying, it's just a fancy way of saying it's manual. Interactive sounds fancy, but you could say manual as well, and because ultimately that's what it means. So there's human involved, and there's some downsides to that, of course. So if you look at some of the benefits, obviously comparisons, where you're moving to more automated processes, one, you're removing these manual steps that are involved in the process, giving you more control over the results. So you can control what the results are going to be, get consistent results as well, and reduce any risk involved from human error in any of those manual steps in your process. Obviously, you need to ensure and test and make sure that your automated process is correct. But when it is, you do remove that human risk element that's involved otherwise. Other thing with automated steps is that they can then be an automated step in a wider workflow in your content lifecycle or within your document management systems as well. So they can take place automatically, where a human has to kind of decide what to do. Of course, it can't be fully automated because somebody needs to tell it what to do at some point in the process. So, and ultimately, the whole aim is to reduce the QC time required in preparation of these PDF files as well. So if you look at some of the things, just kind of making it a little bit more granular, some of the things that you may be doing manually, either with one or multiple tools today, obviously the creation of your bookmarks and hyperlinks, embedding fonts and ensuring that the correct fonts are used, the generation of all your different tables of, table of contents, TOTs, TOFs, all of those, again, can be fully automatically generated. Headers, footers, it can be added and applied, including pagination, watermarks that are necessary. If you're still in draft stage, you may want to ensure that you still have watermarks applied at various points as well. Merging multiple content together, you may be authoring at a very granular level. So you need to merge multiple files together to get the correct granularity for the CTD, for example. So you may be merging multiple files together, which again might be a different manual process today. That can be automated. And conversely, you can split content up. So if your files are too large, they exceed file size limits, you can have it automatically split the content to kind of adhere to those guidelines as well. Optimizing for fast web view, making sure you're using the correct PDF version, depending on where you're submitting, cleaning up any empty pages or empty paragraphs within content and initial view settings, ensuring your images are compressed in the correct way, using the correct compression techniques, whether that's black and white images, grayscale, color. The guidance has separate guidance for each type, making sure that they're encoded in the correct way. Making sure OCR potentially can be automated. Quite often that's a separate step, separate process you may have, but ultimately that can be incorporated into this automation as well, and making sure that any images become text searchable and text-based files as well. And even the validation itself at the end, where you're validating the content and making sure that the PDF is submission ready, that checklist that you run, however you capture that, whether that's in spreadsheets or tracking sheets or whatever it may be, you can automate those final checks as well to say, yes, this is truly submission or health authority ready as well. And that can be an automated step. And we'll have a look at that as we go. And again, I just want to highlight that one point about the validation. It is ultimately, an important point to say, yes, you can do all these steps to prepare the PDF, but at some point, another step in your process, manual step, is often actually checking and making sure that your PDF is the correct version. It doesn't exceed file size limits. You don't have any broken links, any broken bookmarks. There's that checklist element at the end as well. That itself can be an automated step too. So how exactly could you go about it? And what I'm going to focus on here is how you could use and leverage the rendering technology. And I'm obviously going to use DocShifter here as the example to automate a lot of these tasks. As I say, I'll highlight very clearly that rendering technology is beyond just the conversion of the document from Word to PDF, for example. It can incorporate a lot more and automate a lot of steps for you. Basically using the metadata that's available within your document management platform, using that metadata and building rules-based workflows that basically tell the system what to do at what point in the life cycle. Say when the content reaches this state or this status, or is sent to this queue, or whatever it may be, or dropped into this folder, you can build rules to say what exactly should happen to that content. How should it be checked? How should it be fixed? How should it be resolved? So that's what we're going to look at here, is how we can leverage the rendering technology, build workflows, leveraging the metadata available to it, again, for automation. And again, when we talk about rendering, it's not just that conversion. It's taking content from different repositories that you have. And a lot of you will have centralized most of your regulatory content maybe in one document management platform. However, you may still have other platforms that you're leveraging for different content, whether that's for collaboration, whatever it may be. But any type of file should be able to be processed in this way. We're focusing here on PDF, but ultimately you should be able to deal with any type of file, with your rendering platform too. And incorporate other steps. So you can take PDFs, and even before you get a PDF, you should be able to check and validate your Word file for issues that might cause problems with the PDF in the first place. So even tackling the problem before the PDF is even generated can obviously, result in significant benefits for you as well, long term. Performing the OCR steps and merging, splitting, adding headers, footers, pagination, watermarks, a lot of those things I mentioned that we can automate can all be included in these workflows. You just define in which scenarios, in which cases you want to do what, how do you want to combine them together. And that's what I'll show you here, is just a few different use cases of different combinations of these elements that can be performed automatically by the rendering platform. And really what we do here is, as I say, we build these rules-based workflows. So we've got these run in the background. So user never sees these. And basically, these are monitoring your content repositories for documents in defined locations that are reaching the correct status, or being sent to the correct queue, or stored in the correct folder, if you like, for an activity to take place, for some action to take place. So in this case, I'm monitoring 3 different locations in SharePoint, and then depending on the type of file and the metadata that's available to it, I'm going to perform different actions on that content fully automatically without any human interaction at all. So it's not just about monitoring a location and converting it to PDF. It's potentially monitoring a location and fixing a PDF, or adding bookmarks, or adding hyperlinks, or whatever other steps you want to incorporate. All of that can be done. So again, these workflows are running in the background, they're configured, and they're left running. When I talk about the leveraging the metadata, those are just points in the workflow. So I'm monitoring, in this case, just an example using Viva, a repository. And what I'm doing here is I'm looking at different steps where I'm looking at the metadata that's available, saying, in this case, I'm just creating a compliant PDF for different regions. And I'm basically saying, do I need to have a European compliant PDF created? Do I need a Swiss medic compliant PDF, a Japanese PMDA compliant PDF, a FDA compliant PDF, or a Health Canada compliant PDF, as many steps as you like. We're basically leveraging, looking at the metadata, saying, is this type of rendition required, using whatever metadata is available to it? And if it is required, then it says, okay, for Europe, I'm going to create a PDF in this way in the first place, or I'm going to kind of convert my PDF to a compliant PDF in this specific way. If it's for Switzerland, it may be 99.9% may be exactly the same. You may just have 1 or 2 parameters that are slightly different in how you prepare your PDFs for Switzerland. Japan may be a little bit more different as well, so the specifications there can be different, etc. So what I'm doing here is just leveraging the metadata and then telling it, under these circumstances, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to prepare that PDF file in the background. And again, this is just another case with reports where you're monitoring a location, in this case in SharePoint, monitoring a location where I've got collections of files together. There may be PDF files, there may be other types of files. I'm monitoring those, and I'm leveraging the metadata to say, okay, I'm looking for the doc type parameter or property on the collection of documents. Depending on the value of that doc type piece of metadata, I'm going to take one of 4 different routes through the workflow. So if the value is CTD, it's going to take one route and it's going to add some elements to the report. It's going to add maybe a ToC and add a pagination. If I say it's a clinical report, I'm maybe going to merge everything. I'm going to remove empty content. I'm going to add tables of contents. I'm going to add a cover page. I'm going to split it into multiple PDFs at the end. I'm going to do some automated hyperlinking, etc. So depending on the type of report, which is defined or specified within this piece of metadata, we can tell it to do different things or perform different actions. So looking at some maybe practical examples, and again, I just want to remind here that, I'm going to go through some screens and talk through kind of how this can be done right now. For a more in-depth look at it and an actual live demonstration of it actually working, I will be going through that next week. So I'll actually do a lot of these and some other examples actually live in the system for you as well. But if we look at that, and again, this is just a very basic slide, just to explain what I'll talk about first, there's individual tasks. So you can automate just individual tasks themselves. So they could be workflows that are just set up to hyperlink your content at a certain point in that document's life cycle, or to bookmark the content at a certain point in the life cycle, etc. So you can have these individual tasks if you want, automated tasks, or you can have multiple tasks that just have, maybe they bookmark the content and they remove empty pages and empty paragraphs, for example. Or, they do the hyperlinking and the bookmarking and the ToCs. So you can combine different tasks into single workflows. So when that content reaches a certain lifecycle status, it applies multiple options, all the way to the point where it kind of does everything. It kind of renders the content, merges multiple files together, adds hyperlinks, automatically adds ToCs and table of figures, bookmarks, make sure everything is compliant, and then validates the results at the end as well. So you can have everything from individual tasks to full huge content automation as well, depending on how you combine these steps. So if I show you kind of what that looks like practically, and if you look at an example workflow, this is as simple a workflow as you can get. I'm basically monitoring a location, in this case in SharePoint. And in that location in SharePoint, I'm basically telling it, when exactly should this task take place? And all I'm doing then is leveraging a piece of metadata saying, when this hyperlink parameter is set, it's a trigger. When that parameter is set to true, then that content will be sent through this workflow automatically. And of course, that parameter could be set automatically as part of that content's lifecycle as well. So when that content, as I say, that's the first step, is when should it take place? That's the first step in the workflow. The second step is, and you can see that here in SharePoint, I could see that all that is a piece of metadata, this hyperlink parameter on the content. So it's a very basic example. Obviously, in the way this looks in Documentum or in Viva or in Enov, it's different for each one, of course, but ultimately it's a piece of metadata, just showing you here as an example in SharePoint. So I'm going to use that to say that's the trigger for it. I then say what I want to do with it. So when that trigger is reached or that activity happens, then I just want to do some automated hyperlinking. And here I just specify all of the parameters for how that automated hyperlinking should take place. I basically build rules to say how, what text should be converted into a hyperlink, and we can define these rules, limiting it by fonts, by the text, by search strings, by styling, etc. So there's a lot of ways we can search for it to automate this fully and automatically define where the target should be. That target obviously typically could be within the document, but also where you're merging multiple files together as part of a report generation, for example, the target could actually technically be a different source document as well. So it can be cross-document if those files are being merged into a single concatenated PDF or concatenated report. So we have those steps being defined. So we can detail criteria, and next week I'll go into this in a little bit more detail. So we set those parameters, and at the end of it, what you'll end up with is, in this case, I was doing it from Word, and I'm actually adding the hyperlinks automatically in Word. it would work exactly the same way if this was a PDF file. So if I had a PDF file without any access to the original source at all, I can do exactly the same thing. So I've got my Word document and I run it through that workflow, and it's automatically, look through some narrative text, ignoring, for example, heading styles. So it's made sure that it doesn't try to convert table one itself into a hyperlink as well. It's just looking through certain defined styles here. And it's converted and created all of these hyperlinks automatically. So I've got my tables, table 12, figure 1 in the original Word document. So it can, if you like, do this at source, even before you get the PDF. Or of course, you could also have that occur within the PDF that's generated. Whether the original file was a PDF or a Word, it doesn't matter. You can still perform this automation as well. So there we've now got all the hyperlinks, and they're also created in a fully compliant way. We'll make sure that the color is correct, it's set to inherit zoom, etc. as well. So that would be a case of, for hyperlinking. If you look at auto bookmarking, content detection, just combining maybe a couple of elements together. So in this case, I'm monitoring a location, and then if it's already a PDF file, I can just automatically then say, okay, I just want to do my automated PDF bookmarking and some content detection, removing some guidance text or empty pages in the file, for example. If it isn't already a PDF file, we maybe add a slightly different step because maybe it's a PNG file. So we need to convert it to PDF first, maybe run an OCR step in it, for example, before we do the bookmarking, because of course we can't bookmark when it's an image. So we get it to PDF first, OCR it, and then we add some auto bookmarking there as well. But in this case, what I'm doing is I'm specifying in my PDF bookmarking, I won't go through all the parameters, but just looking at this step here, the PDF bookmarker, I define in here rules for how, what text should I be looking for to become an automated bookmark as well. So obviously we define these rules within that step in the workflow. And again, that's engaged fully automatically. You can end up with a PDF file that's dropped into a repository, reaches a certain status. In this case, I have no bookmarks and I have some guidance text that's been left in. I have no access to the original source document, but I need it removed, including empty pages and other things as well. Even headers, footers, you can remove automatically. Just showing you a simple example here with some guidance text. That file, again, automatically would be converted when it reaches the trigger status. The bookmarks will be generated automatically for me throughout the entire document, or collection of documents if you're using this in a reporting, automated report flow. And my guidance text is stripped out as well without affecting the page flow. So in this case, I can tell it to remove the text without then repositioning text, which can, of course, then have an impact on the flow of the document and table of content pages, etc. as well. So those are things combining a couple of steps. If you look at a more extreme example, where you maybe want to merge multiple documents together, auto hyperlink, auto add tables of contents, bookmarks, compliant, make sure the results are compliant, and then actually validate the results, validate the PDF as well to give this nice report to tell you what exactly is going on within that PDF. You can do that as well. This is quite a straightforward linear flow, but there's a number of steps involved in that for each of those steps I mentioned. But just to highlight here, in this case, this is just showing you the PDF validation step where I can define which things do I want to check in my validation report for the content. Keep in mind, this is not a submission validator. This is an individual PDF validation. And it's checking all those PDFs, even before you include this in the submission, making sure you have no broken links, broken bookmarks. You have a ToC if there should be one present. All of those elements, this is going to check for me automatically and generate a report that tells me whether that's a compliant PDF, whether it passed or failed each of the checks that you told it to perform. You're going to pass or fail on all of these things. And then where there's any failures, it gives you details of exactly where that failure occurred in the PDF, etc. as well. And of course, many of those things that fail, you can fix by simply reprocessing the file. And we ran other webinars to talk through those things as well. So all of this I'll go into in a lot more detail, of course, next week in a live demonstration. That just gives you some idea of how you can combine, different capabilities and perform automation on single tasks or multiple tasks as well. So just in terms of wrapping up, obviously the whole idea of this automation is just to achieve a lot of the benefits that you get from any type of automation. One, you're streamlining a process that might include many different manual steps using different tools. So streamlines the entire process, which accelerates your whole content preparation process as well. Can-Aid, if you're talking about, trying to achieve simultaneous global submissions, where you take the same PDFs, reusing them for different regions, obviously you can automate a lot of that too. So it certainly improves and can help, towards that kind of target. And really helps you identify issues earlier. If you can automate tasks, you can automate including the validation of the content, you can identify problems earlier on, fully automatically, and to help you achieve content compliance earlier, not once it's gone through a publishing tool, but really once we've gone through, these manual, these automated steps as well. The whole aim ultimately is to reduce the risk, streamline, with the ultimate aim of reducing risk of any non-compliance in your content. Okay. So with that, again, just a reminder about the session next week. Sorry, I know I'm reminding you a lot about it, but again, the idea here is that this is introducing it, showing you some of the scenarios, practical scenarios, and next week we'll actually do that live together in the session. If you can't join for some reason on that date, if you could still accept the invite, you'll receive a recording of it, and then obviously watch it when you do have time as well. Okay. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their time. I hope to see some of you again next week. A quick poll at the end, just a couple of questions for you as always. If you don't mind answering, that'll be useful. And I hope, as I say, to see you next week. And thank you for joining today. And again, hopefully see you in some future webinars as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day wherever you are.